Hi, Magician Recaps explains here. We are recapping 2019 American superhero film. Now let's get right into the movie. The film begins in 1975. Jean Grey is in a car with her parents. Her mother drives and listens to classical music, which Jean doesn't like, and pleads to her to change the channel. However, her mother shade her that once she grows older and drives her own car, she can listen to whatever music she wants, which makes Jean not happy with that. And she uses her telekinetic powers to change the channel a few times, but things get out of control when she is unable to control her powers, which causes a collision with another car. At the hospital, it is revealed that Jean's parents are dead, and Charles Xavier comes to take her to his school. As Jean blames herself for the death of her parents, Charles comforts her by informing her that she can either use her powers for bad or good. The choice is completely up to her, but if she decides to walk on the good path, then Charles could help her. At first, Jean is reluctant to enter the school, saying that she can break things, but Charles assures her that he'll help her so she won't break anything. Later in 1992, Charles Xavier is contacted by the president, asking for help to rescue the astronauts from the Endeavour space shuttle, which is critically damaged by solar flare-like energy. At first, Hank is reluctant since he believes that his jet can ascend to very high altitudes, but agrees to help the people out. The X-Men are called in for the mission, and Jean asks Mystique if she wants to go out there or not, to which Mystique replies that she does, and if anything wrong happens, they'll turn around. Meanwhile, Charles connects himself to the NASA space station using the Cerebro, and assures them that everything is under control, and help is on the way. Kurt and Peter safely pick up the astronauts, and take them back to their jet, but the astronauts tell them that their commander is still inside the shuttle. Raven says that it's better to leave without him, but Charles orders them to retrieve him, saying that Jean could keep the shuttle intact to buy some time. The solar flare is coming closer to the shuttle at a tremendous speed, but Jean and Kurt hurry to save the commander. As Kurt takes the commander to the X-Men jet, Jean is struck by the solar flare, but she absorbs every last bit of it. After the space shuttle blasts, everyone thinks that Jean is dead, and Kurt takes her body back to their jet, only to find that she survived the blast. The team is back on the surface and is greeted by a huge crowd cheering for them. Charles then welcomes the heroes and expresses how proud he is of them. He then asks Hank to examine Jean for any medical injuries. Raven and Charles walk to Charles' office only to argue about Charles putting the team in extremely dangerous situations, which are unnecessary. But Charles believes that he's trying to make a good name for the mutants and cares for them as much as she does. When Hank takes a look at Jean's vitals, he tells her that she is completely normal, but Jean reads his mind and asks him to tell what's not right about her. He tells her that absorbing the flare has exponentially increased her psychic powers. In the evening, a party is organized at the school to celebrate the team's success, where everyone is present, except for Hank, Raven, and Charles. The president invites Charles to a special party to honor him and his team's efforts. At first, Jean seems to enjoy the party, but suddenly, a mental block that is put by Charles on her is broken by her amplified powers, which leave her in a traumatized state. Unable to control or deal with it, she unleashes an attack on the other mutants present there. Charles senses this, and heads straight to home to find Jean unconscious, resting in her bed. He tries to get inside her mind, but her powers won't let him inside, so he uses the Cerebro to connect with Jean. He explains to Raven and Hank about the walls that he put into Jean's mind to protect her from her childhood trauma that is slowly wearing down, and in the process, Jean forces Charles out of her head and wakes up. Scott tries to comfort Jean and stop her from seeing her father, but Jean puts him to sleep and leaves at once. Charles says that Jean is experiencing rage and desire at once, and that they need to stop her from meeting her father since it's not good for her to be with him. Jean travels to her hometown to find her father still alive. At first, she is really happy to see him, but when she finds out that her father didn't even bother looking for her and abandoned her, she grows really upset with him. When she asks her father the reason for all her suffering, her father lets her inside his mind to see everything, which even upsets her more. Charles, with his team, comes searching for Jean, and they try to make her come with them, which Jean refuses, to imply that she's angry with Charles hiding the truth from her. The cops also arrive at the scene, and Jean, yet again, loses control over herself, harming the others. After numerous attempts by everyone, Raven tries to console her and assures her that everything is fine with her. But Jean accidentally kills her. In guilt, she flies away, and Hank mourns her death. They return to the school and give Raven a proper burial. The children at the school believe that Jean has turned evil and killed Raven, but Scott tells them that she's just unable to control herself, and that she isn't bad. When Charles approaches Hank to comfort him, Hank blames Charles for Raven's death. He asks Charles to admit that he was wrong about protecting Jean from the truth, and wishes they never followed him. In Jean's hometown, two aliens morphed into actual humans arrive at Earth to ask Jean's father about her whereabouts. Meanwhile, Jean travels to Genosha Island, the place for mutant refugees, seeking help from Eric Lensher, Popu, orally known as Magneto. She asks Eric about hurting others and controlling her powers, but their conversation is cut short by the US military soldiers who come to the place looking for Jean to arrest her. Eric asks Jean to stay inside, and tells the chief that she never came to the place. Surprisingly, Jean reveals herself, and tries to destroy the military choppers, and kill the soldiers. Eric saves their lives using his powers, and asks them to retreat. When Jean again asks him for help, he refuses, and tells her to leave. A disappointed Jean sits in a bar when she is approached by a woman known as Vuk, who in reality is an alien leader of the Debari race. She tries to manipulate Jean by telling her that she is something special, and what's inside her is unimaginably powerful. Scott is unable to find Hank in the classroom and his quarters, and reports the situation to Charles. Meanwhile, Hank takes the X-Men jet to Genosha Island, and asks for Eric's cooperation in finding Jean. Eric says he has no good reason to do so, but Hank tells him about Raven's death, and Eric vows to kill Jean if he finds her. Vuk takes Jean to her hideout and shows her how powerful the flare what she inside her is. She tells Jean that the solar flare that she absorbed is something that is the creator of worlds, and the destroyer of Vuk's race. She also reveals to Jean that she is destined to be a galactic force, much greater than anyone could imagine. Eric locates Jean in New York, and Charles finds out about his plan to kill Jean. Charles asks only Scott to accompany him to save Jean, but Scott asks his other team members for their help, and everyone tags along to save Jean. Eric, along with Hank and his men, march towards Jean, but Charles tries to stop him, saying that the mutants of right now will be destroyed because of them, but Eric ignores him, and continues the hunt. A brawl breaks out between the two sides, and after quite the struggle, Eric can get inside. Inside the building, he finds Jean, who has been manipulated by Vuk, and he tries to kill her but fails. Then she shows him a glimpse of her power, and throws him out of the building. Charles asks Kurt to take him inside to see Jean. Charles tries to explain that she isn't what she thinks she is, and there's still good inside her. He lets Jean into his mind to see the memories from the past, which leave Jean in a remorseful state. Jean asks Vuk that she can't do it and asks Vuk to take the force from her. Vuk's true intentions are revealed when she almost kills Jean to have the power for herself, stating that others' lives mean nothing to her, and her race will thrive on Earth, replacing humans and mutants. Amidst the chaos, the US military steps in, and all the mutants except for Vuk are captured by troops, and placed on a train headed towards a mutant containment facility. On the train, Charles accepts that it was all along his fault for lying to Jean about her past, but says that he never put the powers into her that made her do things that hurt others. He also says that Jean has such a tremendous power inside her that Vuk will come looking for her to kill her. But the killing won't just stop there. Suddenly the train is attacked midway by Vuk and her forces to capture Jean. Eric and Charles warn the soldiers that the things out there aren't mutants, and that they're going to need help from the mutants, but the soldiers reject their ideas. Looking at the situation, a soldier unlocks the restraints on the mutants, and they team up to fight off the aliens. Scott takes Charles to Jean to wake her up. When almost all the Debaris are taken down, Vuk steps in, and takes out the mutants one by one. Xavier confers with Jean within his mind, allowing Jean's personality to gain control of the force within her, and Jean wakes up vowing to protect her family. Jean effortlessly takes out the rest of the Debaris, and Vuk approaches her to take her powers. When Jean tries to kill Vuk, she finds everyone else disintegrating, too, so she decides to take Vuk to the space to end her for once and for all. Jean disappears, and in the aftermath, an explosion lights up the sky, and a burning phoenix is formed. The Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters is renamed Jean Grey's School for Gifted Youngsters, with Hank becoming the new dean. Charles has finally retired and settled down in Paris. Eric walks up to him and asks him to play a game of chess, which Xavier reluctantly agrees to. In the end, a burning phoenix is seen flying in the sky, possibly implying that Jean is still alive. That was the recap of the movie. Hope you enjoyed it. Now comment on what your favorite part was, and make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel to help us out. Until next time, this has been Total Recapped.